Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you, as always, by the GSMC Sports Network. Happy Friday, everyone. I hope you had a fantastic week. And let's just have a show where we close out the week in a nice, good fashion and just go into the weekend better than ever, and we'll be back next week with even more fantastic content. But today's show should be a fantastic week concluder for y'all. We are going to be looking at potentially the last game of the NBA season, if you guys can believe it. Previewing, in terms of fantasy and betting odds, Game 4 of the Boston Celtics and Dallas Mavericks NBA Finals. We're going to be recapping perhaps the most exciting game to date in the Stanley Cup Final between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers. And then, to round out the show, we are in the Euros mindset officially as the Euros start today, and we are going to be doing not one, not two, but three Euros team fantasy previews as the Euros begin today. It should be a fantastic show. But before we get into all that and we get you guys hyped for the weekend, where I hope you're going to be watching all these interesting Euros games for those people who might not be familiar with the world of football outside of the States, I do ask that you like, follow, and subscribe to the show. It is a huge support to both me, my fellow podcasters, and the network. We do also receive a lot of tips and donations, so if you do feel so inclined, please leave them. Another look at a preview for our last segment. Sorry, guys. Please leave any tips and donations that you are considering leaving at the link gsmc.cloud. It is also a huge support to both me, my fellow podcasters, and the network. So, if you do consider that, it is greatly appreciated. But without further ado, let's get into the fantastic content I have for you to conclude this week. And we will start off in the NBA. This could be a very bittersweet segment, guys, because this is potentially it. This could be the game where the Boston Celtics wrap up, complete the sweep, and hang a record 18th title banner in the TD Garden rafters. So, this definitely feels a little bit sad, knowing that I may not be able to do another preview for another NBA game for quite some time. But without further ado, let's jump right into this one, and we'll ride off into the sunset if the Celtics do wrap it up, knowing that we will have another fantastic NBA season in a couple of months. So let's just get right into it. This kind of feels a little bit humdrum in terms of fantasy, so let's start off with betting odds for this game. Dallas obviously is favored. They're at home. Their backs are very much up against the wall. The over-under is 211.5, and the money lines are right now even. Dallas at minus 110 and Boston at minus 110. So there's a little bit of apathy in the betting trend here. They know that Boston is looking to sweep, and so the bookmakers are obviously kind of, level-headed about all this. They know that the Dallas Mavericks might want to come out here and deliver for their home fans, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised with any result. But on tonight's game, maybe shy away from the betting trends. In terms of fantasy, another kind of humdrum thing. Luka, obviously, still the number one player, most highly coveted player on the market in terms of price, at 13.6K on DraftKings, projected to have 61.6 fantasy points. La-di-da-di-da. Kyrie, after his outstanding Game 3 performance in a losing effort, only valued at 9K. I think he should be a bit higher. He is expected to have 40.5 fantasy points. In terms of the Celtics, because you never know what you're going to get, I'm just going to say that Jaylen Brown, in my mind, is going to be the most coveted fantasy player from the Celtics. He's looking to be potentially the finals MVP of the series. He's valued at 10K, projected to have 43.8 DraftKings fantasy points. Another guy who I'm going to throw out there just because who knows if KP is going to play in this game. I think that Al Horford is going to have a fantastic game. And I don't think a lot of people know this, but when he has been defending Luka, Luka has really struggled. He's the defender who Luka has most struggled with in this entire series, and that is a testament to the longevity of a guy like Al Horford, the way he takes care of himself, and the way he has transformed into a role player in this league who can really help different teams. Only valued at 5.8 in my mind. That is a steal for him. And 27.3 fantasy points. Now, I just want to name another Dallas Mavericks player in terms of fantasy, but it's definitely up to him to step up, and we'll get more into that as the segment goes on. P.J. Washington, valued at 6.2K, 28.5 points. Look for him to be kind of that sleeper utility player in fantasy, and someone who just needs to step up on the court in real life. Now, let's just get into that kind of whole storyline surrounding the teammates that Luka Doncic has and the kind of fallout from his fouling out in Game 3. Now, obviously, the fence is split with this one. The whole situation, there are two different mindsets. What Luka did was wrong. He always complains, and it's always going to be like that. My mindset is kind of in between. Yes, what he did was unprofessional, but also, A, it was bound to happen, like I said yesterday, and B, the Boston Celtics have just been pestering him on both ends of the floor so much. Like, what do you expect of a superstar? When you're a superstar with that much pressure on you, and you're facing a team that is such well-rounded in both areas of the floor, they can pick on you, they know your weaknesses immediately, and they take advantage of them. It makes sense for someone to lash out if they are a huge superstar, and that's exactly what I think Luka did. It definitely was detrimental to the team. It definitely disrupted the flow of Kyrie's game. He was in his bag. Luka did not acknowledge that, and ultimately the Mavs fell short when they could have stolen that game and made this a closer series than it is. I think that right now Luka just feels very isolated in this team. The story has always been, throughout this postseason run, Luka and Kyrie will bail out the Dallas Mavericks due to the fact that they are simply unstoppable and the fact that they are fantastic distributors of the basketball. That hasn't happened in this NBA Finals. Now, whether you decide to blame Luka for this or his teammates, I do think that the teammates are doing absolutely nothing. I know this could be a testament to the Celtics defense, but there's no movement in this Dallas offense, no signs of life from any of the other role players outside of Luka right now. The whole offense for the Dallas Mavericks this series has been Luka Doncic getting to his mid-range spots, shooting jumpers, but the whole point of what the Dallas Mavericks did to get to this point was shoot the corner three, have Luka not just be a scorer but be a distributor, and that has been taken away from them. And so the huge question in my mind is, does Luka deserve to be frustrated, or are his teammates frustrating him? Because right now Luka has definitely done all he can to bail out his teammates. Now I think the teammates need to step up, and we saw that with Kyrie Irving, who is kind of a different story in his own right, where he had a huge Game 3 and Luka kind of let him down, and Kyrie was trying to be the reasonable one in that situation. But still, you're Kyrie Irving. You've been in this situation before. Luka hasn't, and he needs help. You can't have just 1 out of 3 good games in this NBA Finals, if you understand what I'm saying. This definitely does make sense fantasy-wise to talk about, just because players like Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford have barely even scratched double digits, or even the teens for that matter. Derek Lively only had 1 good game as well. And then P.J. Washington only had a couple good moments in these games as well. And so, you can say whatever you want about Luka Doncic, but if you were in his situation, I would certainly feel as if I needed to lash out at something, because it certainly doesn't feel like a very collective unit right now in the Dallas Mavericks locker room. There definitely feels like there's a disconnect. Maybe it's just due to the fact that the Celtics are simply sucking the energy out of what they do so well. But still, Luka Doncic has time and time again proven that he can, outside of all his complaining about fouls, be a superstar in this league. He is in the NBA Finals for the first time in his career, and ultimately he's going to learn from this situation. He's going to learn from the experience of being beat by a far superior team. But I just want to see some effort from his teammates. when you're in the NBA Finals, you're not just playing for pride right now. You are playing as a collective. You need to play as a collective unit. In terms of the Boston Celtics, that is what they're doing. Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown don't care about how many times they foul people. They don't care about the shot creation they get. They care about, hey, if we're cooking, we're cooking. Because we can be one of the best duos in the league when both of us are on our games. But if we're not, let's get other people involved. They are constantly moving the ball, confounding and confusing this Dallas defense. And that's part of Luka's frustration. But his frustration is warranted when we consider the fact that the Boston Celtics, unlike the Dallas Mavericks, irregardless of whether or not their stars are having a good day, are being the better team. They're being the bigger team right now. They are being reasonable. They refuse to die in this series like we saw when the Mavs had a furious late surge and then somehow the Celtics got it together and won that game. We are seeing that right now the Boston Celtics are hungrier. Obviously, I hope that Luka learns from this experience and takes it with him as he progresses throughout his career and hopefully gets to more finals, because I definitely think that he can. But as of right now, the Boston Celtics are just absolutely dominant. However, I do feel that this game could go either way. I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas forces a Game 5 and the series has to go back to Boston, and maybe there's a little seed of doubt planted in Boston minds. But I would definitely not be surprised if Boston swept this series. And so that is what I'm going to pick. I think that Dallas will cover the spread, obviously, because there have been some pretty close games. But right now, I'm leaning more towards Boston sweep than Dallas doing anything. Obviously, the home crowd could be a huge factor, as we saw in Game 3, and Dallas could get out to a huge lead. But Boston, just know, will not be feared by that. I'm looking for both Jays to have huge fantasy games. Luka will obviously have a huge fantasy game. But the rest of how this fantasy implications go is up to the Dallas Mavs as a team. But that will just about do it for this segment of today's show. Coming up next, as we always do, maybe for one of the last times in this show before we say goodbye to these two beautiful sports, we transition from basketball to hockey. We'll be recapping probably the most exciting game to date in this series between the Florida Panthers and Edmonton Oilers. We will be right back to discuss that. You don't want to miss this segment on what could be the last time I ever say the words transitioning from basketball to hockey on this show. We'll be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind.